the world is changing and technology become like related to everything, okay? But every time the technology evolves, the threats comes like extra on these technologies. Today we have Mr. Robert Lee from Dragos. Welcome. I'm so honored to meet you.
Yeah, thanks.
He's the CEO of Dragos. We're gonna explore and talk about the cybersecurity and behind this industry. How are you first?
Great. I'm always happy to be here in the region. Also, Dubai is always kind of changing every like 2 months. Every time I come over, it's some major new thing. So talking about technology change and rate of change, yeah, it's a lot, but it's exciting and it's fun to be here.
Great. Please, for those who don't know about you and Dragos, can you please introduce yourself and Dragos?
Yeah, sure. So as mentioned, my name is Rob Lee, CEO and founder here at Dragos. We're an industrial cybersecurity firm. So really the main focus of our company is our technology, but what I think really makes our company special is all the people aspect of it as well. So we try to partner with our customers with services and so forth as well. But it's really about trying to get into those industrial environments and being able to monitor so we can tell people what they have, how it's configured, how it's put together, but also detect threats and help them to respond. And when you talk about industrial, it's just really useful to understand that our entire world is industrial. You know, a lot of attention gets paid to like financial services and insurance firms and so forth, and they're great firms, but everything with physics, everything that we actually deal with on a day-to-day basis, clean water, the rail system, the lights, the fuel, the oil system, like all of that is industrial networks and industrial systems. And it just hasn't got the attention that it's probably deserved. So as our world changes and as that infrastructure gets more connected, it's just really important to go do the security work that's necessary there. And as far as my background, I started out in the US Air Force side of the house, spent most of my time over in the intelligence community where I built out a mission looking at the various state actors around the world targeting these industrial sites, because quite honestly, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what your belief structure is, hopefully we can all agree that civilians should be off limits to conflict. And so how do we get in and provide safe infrastructure to just make sure those jerks around the world are not impacting our families?
We heard about those 3 activities that associated with Dragos cybersecurity. Can you please talk us or tell us more about these activities?
Yeah, so you know, there's various groups around the world, whether they're state actors or criminals or whoever, that target these industrial sites. And sometimes they do it for, you know, ransomware, and it's just criminal activity to try to ransom a power plant or so forth and get money. Sometimes they're getting access to still intellectual property, you know, manufacturing, how do they actually design the industrial process and so forth. Sometimes it's pre-positioning for future conflict, and sometimes it's actually those disruptive and destructive attacks. And 2015 in Ukraine, an adversary took down the electric system there, did it again in 2016. 2017 in Saudi Arabia, an adversary compromised a safety system to try to kill people at a petrochemical facility, like just these types of activities. So this last year we found 3 of these new groups. And so we track teams, we had tracked 15 before, now there's 18 that we track that are state groups that explicitly target these industrial systems. And you know, 2 of the groups this year were interesting, but nothing to get too alarmed about. They're trying to get access, they're learning, but they're not going to take out the lights tomorrow. You know, they've got a journey to go, and so you want to track them early. You want to get ahead of those problems, but it's okay. One of them was pretty concerning. One of them broke into a company that provides services for a lot of energy sites, and they pre-positioned in a couple different countries at these energy sites at the locations that, in our assessment, would be the necessary locations to actually do disruptive effects. And so when you see state actors getting in a position to potentially cause disruption into our critical infrastructure, lights out, you know, fuel issues, things like that, that's where you get really, really concerned. And so luckily the clients, you know, called us and called the right people, and we got in and did the instant response and kind of tracked the group after that to see where they targeted. So we got ahead of it, but there's a lot of activity out there, and I would say that if you think about the number of infrastructure providers that are actually getting into those environments to monitor, to look, to detect, it's a minority. So my concern is always, what are we not seeing? But yeah, those 3 groups, it's good to get an understanding of them and then help our customers understand what they need to do to protect themselves in the future.
Okay, great. About these groups, there is like any potential, let's say, it's a 3, and those 3 groups are, let's say, as you say, 2 not harmed and 1 is very harmed. Or not very harmed, like you expected and everything was sorted out. But there is like 40 group maybe will come in the future because everything, digital transform everything. What do you predict for the future?
Yeah, so I like to look to history to kind of inform our future, right? And so in 2015, it would have been crazy to talk about three groups. You know, at that time it was like there's like one or two that you knew about. And in 2015, by tracking like one or two, by the time we started seeing attacks manifest, it turns out there was actually three or four, right? And so we could see one or two, but there was a broader picture that we didn't see because you don't have perfect visibility. And so, okay, well, it turns out to be three or four. And it took them multiple years to get to a point where they could really do the types of attacks that we are concerned with, right? Because it's not as simple, like you can take down the website of a bank, but it takes a lot to do disruptive attack to a petrochemical facility. You know, it's physics is involved and engineering. But my point in that is, if we look, it takes like 2 to 3 year journey, and there's usually some amount that we don't see. So when I look to today and I see 18 of them, I worry about, okay, what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years in terms of how many of those 18 will actually be disruptive, which will be some smaller amount, but how many are we not seeing beyond that 18? So when I look to the future, I say that the threat landscape is getting more aggressive. We are seeing more threats than we have before. But I also think there are state actors that see other states have these capabilities. You know, they see an attack happen, they go, well, I want to be able to do that. And so there's kind of, I don't want to overhype this, but there's kind of an arms race aspect to it.
Okay.
And I think we'll see more and more of these groups explicitly targeting these industrial facilities, especially as they transform and become more digital and more connected.
Right. Glad to be here. Glad to be here. Dragos company protecting us. There is hundreds of companies, of course, like you mentioned, is benefit from Dragos cybersecurity system and cybersecurity ecosystem, let's say. Can you please explain more or tell us, like walk us through the threats that like major threats attacking or let's say targeting these companies that working with Dragos?
Yeah, so when we get involved, normally people are coming to us for technology, right? They build a program and they get to a place where they can be proactive and do good security work. Sometimes they're kind of earlier in their journey, which is totally fine. And they want to take advantage of our services teams to get in there and do an architecture review or help them, you know, do a compromise assessment to figure out like, are we already in a bad place and try to help them out. And across that journey, what we typically see with these companies in terms of like the risks they have to face is there are the risks of those threats for sure. And some of those threats are more kind of less frequent, but they're more destructive. They're the ones that like, if they show up, they're bad news, but they don't show up all the time. A lot more criminal activity than people realize. For every one big ransomware case in the news, we're probably dealing with 10 to 20 that you don't hear about, right? There's a lot of activity going on. But what I find interesting beyond the cybersecurity threat piece of it is these industrial environments are becoming so complex and so much more automated. You know, at one point in time, if you were out at a water facility or a petrochemical plant, there was a guy or gal there that had been there for 30 years. And they knew the full plant. And if something went wrong, they knew exactly how to fix it.
Exactly.
But that talent is leaving the workforce. And those systems are becoming so complex and so automated, which is great for society. But there's no way one or two people can know all the components anymore.
Exactly.
And so beyond the cybersecurity threats, one of my big concerns for these companies is when an outage happens, when downtime occurs, when something happens, regardless if it's cybersecurity or anything else, it's just getting harder and harder to troubleshoot it, to get root cause analysis and get to a place where we can actually recover that facility. And so it's a very interesting area where the same technology that you're putting in for cybersecurity use cases to help you find these threats is also the same technology that you can be using to get a better understanding of your environment in the first place and have a more resilient infrastructure. So I like clients to think about both risks, just the risks of resilience in the infrastructure at all, and then also those cybersecurity risks. And instead of pretending that you have to spend a bunch of money to cover all, just be efficient and do it all at once.
Exactly. All right. Speaking of that efficiency, what's saying, let's say, the future of cybersecurity, especially in Middle East?
Yeah.
Or let's say GCC countries or Middle East in general, Arabic.
So I'll paint kind of two paths here for you. One of the things that I see a lot here, probably more than anybody else in the world, and this is going to be the candid critique, and then we'll pay the compliment, right? Here's the candid critique. Okay. There tends to be more of a culture here around buzzwords. What are you doing in AI? What are you doing in blockchain? What are you doing in data analytics? And I don't quite understand it. What customers should be saying is, here's my problem, here's my use case, how can you help me solve it? Whether it's AI or data analytics, or like, forget the tech buzzword. Can that technology, can that partner help solve your case efficiently? Can they help solve your problem? That needs to be more of the focus. And And elsewhere where I go in the world, it's less about what do the big analyst firms say in the report, and it's more about, hey, does this work or not? Here, there's a certain sense of like, oh, well, so-and-so validated this, I need to use that, and it's kind of like this, I don't know, I'd be careful in that here. Because the benefit, the complement, the thing that I see so well here is like the people here are so good in so many ways, but it's also the opportunity in front of you. If you look at what makes a good incident responder, right? So my background was in Intel and incident response. And to be a good incident responder, you had to take incident response cases. There's no trainer but actually doing experience. You have to go get experience. So there's a big difference between somebody who learned something in school and somebody who actually did it. And around the world, the ability to get at-bats, if you will, to be able to get the incident response cases and the experience can be very difficult. But here, fortunately, unfortunately, there's a lot of threats, there's a lot of things happening, and so there's an opportunity to have more experience than anywhere else in the world.
Okay.
So when I look at the GCC and in UAE specifically, and also in Saudi Arabia, but GCC in general, there is an opportunity to have the world's experts on this problem, like by far. Not only do you have passionate, wonderful people with just good expertise, but you're going to have an opportunity as our infrastructure is changing all around us, as the GCC is propelling into the future and an innovative vision, and there's threats that are trying to disrupt that. You have more opportunities than anyone to really get that experience and capture that experience and do it well. And if the GCC can capitalize on that, they will be the world leaders in this discussion.
All right, so great. Let's speaking about opportunities. This facility is so great, it's beautiful. Can you please walk us through more about this facility and what they provide for like the average, or let's say someone is intermediate in this industry?
Yeah. So when we look at a customer's journey, when you think about critical infrastructure companies, you have your information technology networks and you have your operations technology networks. And they're very, very different. You should not just copy and paste your IT strategy into OT. But if you go and do an IT security project, you can get an IT security project done in 6 months. You can do it in a year, but you can do it pretty quickly. Operations technology, it's going to take you longer. Usually you're talking multi-year journey, just because there's so many more OT environments and just the complexity around it, that you're looking at like a multi-year journey to really do it well. And so to me, you can't just have vendors that pitch your products or throw a blinky box in or whatever and walk away. You've got to have partners that you choose and have a long-term relationship with to help you with that journey. And so the way that we try to structure and the way that we try to provide that value, and I think uniquely compared to our competitors, is it's not just about the technology, it's what all else can we do and how can we partner with you. And one of the challenges for everybody is the talent shortage. And there's a lot of good IT security people out there, but they don't have that OT security experience. And so it's how do you take IT security people and help onboard them into OT security to go be effective at that journey. So our business, our revenue, our viability as a company is on selling technology, but our commitment on the partnership and just to be a partner is on knowledge transfer and training. And I don't want to be the American that comes in and launches a company in Dubai to just sell you technology and then leave and Dubai is not better. That's not okay. So what are we doing in the region to make the region better? What are we doing that's partnership, to invest and actually do human capital development and things? That's where I see the office. That's where I see our approach. Training is not a business line for us. We're going to make a bunch of money on training. But the training is our commitment to our customers on, hey, we'll help you take an IT security person who's never stepped foot in a plant before and help you get to a place where you go be effective at OT security, and let's make the region better in doing that. So the office, to me, the ranges, the equipment, the training labs, all of that is really just about that partnership.
Thank you so much for this valuable information, Mr. Robert Lee from Dragos. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.